tanks are coming out of the fort, and they take a turn and skid, and we put a screeching sound on it, and all of the military is mobilized, not all, but that area. The audience started to laugh. I died. And I can recall sinking down in my seat so that my eyes were just about level with the back of the seats in front of me. I said, what is going to happen when that robot comes out of the spaceship? The audience will scream. And then we're cooked. If you laugh at the robot, you got no movie.
Welcome back to Golden Flicker. Today we are exploring the clever recycling of iconic props, the reason the military refused to cooperate with the film's production, a controversial Christian allegory that faced strict censorship, and the hidden history behind The Day the Earth Stood Still. Tell us, do you remember when you first watched this film? Let us know in the comments. Directed by Robert Wise, this science fiction classic became one of the first films to use the genre not for spectacle, but for serious political commentary. It reflected atomic age anxieties and delivered a stark, pacifist message at the height of the Korean War. The film earned a special Golden Globe for promoting international understanding and, decades later, was selected for the National Film Registry. Today, it is consistently ranked amongst the most influential science fiction films ever made. But how did a modest studio production about a visitor from space achieve such an enduring legacy? The film was based on Farewell to the Master, a 1940 short story by Harry Bates. In the original tale, a spaceship lands in Washington and two beings emerge: Klaatu, a humanoid, and Newt, a towering robot. Klaatu is killed by human fear shortly after arrival. The story's twist reveals that Newt was not the servant, but the master all along. Producer Julian Blaustein discovered the story in 1949 while searching for filmable science fiction. He was struck by humanity's fearful response to the unknown. 20th Century Fox purchased the rights for just $1,000, with Bates receiving only $500. Screenwriter Edmund H. North transformed the story significantly. The robot became Gort, and the philosophical twist was replaced with an explicit pacifist warning. Studio chief Darrell F. Zanuck approved the project despite the Korean War breaking out during development, saying, "To hell with it! It's a good piece of entertainment." Big names like Spencer Tracy and Claude Rains were initially considered for Klaatu, but Julian Blaustein insisted on an unknown actor to make the alien visitor more believable.
Now, Spencer Tracy was at the peak of his career. He's crazy about it, and he wants to play Klaatu. And I always felt that Klaatu should be somebody the audience had never seen. If that spaceship opens up, I said, if the character steps off and it's Spencer Tracy, there's no credibility. There's no suspense about what's going to go on. We know Spencer Tracy's a movie actor, and okay, we'll accept it. Anyway, obviously, I talked him out of it.
Enter Michael Rennie, a British actor who just made his American debut in The Black Rose.
And so we immediately arranged to have this young man come in, and it was Michael Rennie. And he walked in, and the minute we saw him, we said, "Hey, this looks like our man." Far better than Claude Rains would have been, because here was a man who was new to the screen, had never been seen in a picture, so nobody could identify him with some other role or some other part of the film. And he was tall and rather ascetic looking, and not the kind of average run-of-the-mill person. So we thought to ourselves, well, this is the way to go. This is our man. He just fell into our laps almost in that sense.
Patricia Neal was cast as Helen Benson. Ironically, she didn't take the script seriously during filming.
But I did nothing but laugh. I mean, I found it so difficult to keep a straight face when I would say Gort, Klaatu, Barado Nikto. And I thought it was hysterical, you know, and the whole thing I thought was so funny. I thought it was the most hysterical thing I'd read. I mean, really. But it turned out to be just a fabulous film.
Pat was fine to work with. She was just excellent. And of course her son, little Billy Gray, who was about 10 or 11 at that time, I guess, was one of the best child actors I've ever worked with.
And I wish the heck I'd have held on to the little diamonds that, because I did sneak some away, and I had them for a while. I don't know what happened to them.
Sam Jaffe played Professor Barnhart, modelled after Albert Einstein. Shortly after casting, his name appeared in Red Channels, a pamphlet listing performers with alleged communist connections. Blaustein fought to keep him, but this was Jaffe's last film for several years. Finding someone to play Gort was challenging. Someone remembered the doorman at Grauman's Chinese Theatre, Lock Martin, who stood 7 feet 7 inches tall. He was hired on the spot.
The top of his head reached the neckline of the robot's suit. The effects people put in prisms so that Lock Martin was looking straight ahead inside the suit, but he was seeing out many, many inches above his headline, so that added the height.
But there was a problem. Martin was tall but frail.
He was rather frail and could only stay in it for just a little bit, I don't know, 10 minutes at a time or something, and he had to get out.
And he suffered a lot in the suit, because the suit was like 1 inch thick foam rubber with a fiberglass shell inside, and he said there's a shot in the film at the end of the movie where Klaatu is saying goodbye and warning us and the whole thing, and Gort is behind him. Well, they had this big dummy out of fiberglass, but they couldn't use it because the set was raked at an angle, and the dummy, the feet were straight out, couldn't use it. So he had to do the whole scene himself, standing up there the whole time. And it was like hours and hours and hours. And like I said, not being a very strong man and having to stand the way he stood, after a while he said all of the feeling went out of his arms. He couldn't move, he couldn't do anything. I mean, everything was going dead. And his arms started to twitch. And if you look behind Klaatu in that scene, you'll see his arms actually moving around and twitching, which he's supposed to, of course, be in a total stationary thing, but he couldn't help it.
Martin couldn't lift Patricia Neal or Michael Rennie whilst wearing the suit. The crew used lightweight dummies, wires and dollies to fake the carrying scenes.
We had 2 robots, one with him in it and one with nobody in the robot, and that robot was the robot that stood there by the side of the ship or was encased in that material that the military used. But that was just an empty robot. And of course, that robot's knees were magnificent. They were smooth and all, but of course, when our robot began to move, the outfit worked great, except for the knees. It drove me crazy anyway, that I could see the knees wrinkle. But somehow or other, it never bothered any critics that I read. And I really didn't hear anything about it. People wasn't bothered by it, which is good.
To create Gort's seamless appearance, 2 suits were made. One laced up the back for front-facing shots, and another laced up the front for rear shots. This hid the seams entirely.
Well, there's one part in the movie where you can see the zipper. It's the only, it's the only faux pas that I've been able to notice. I've seen it probably 6 or 7 times now over the years.
Most of the film was shot on studio sets at 20th Century Fox in Los Angeles, with second unit crews filming location plates in Washington, D.C. The principal cast never traveled there. Doubles were used for wide shots at landmarks like the Lincoln Memorial and Arlington Cemetery. To achieve the seamless, magical opening of the spaceship's door, the crew painted putty over the door seam. When the door opened, the putty split perfectly, making the mechanism invisible.
Now this is the miniature of the flying saucer used in Day the Earth Stood Still. It's 7 feet across, it's made of fiberglass, makes a good drum, and it was used in 2 scenes that I know of in the film. One was a perspective shot where Klaatu's walking down the ramp of the ship at the very beginning. They only had half of the ship built full size, and they wanted to get a little farther around to show more of the size of the ship. So they did a hanging miniature, is what it's called. This was in the foreground, and Klaatu was back probably hundreds of yards away to match this, and it really matched in the film, you can't tell. This also was used in the very end of the film, where the ship is taking off, leaving, and you see it as it lifts up and goes out of the frame. This was the model. The reason this model is so big is the ASA of the film was very, very small in those days. The bigger the set, the bigger the model, the easier it was to shoot. Now this model, later on, was used in a Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea show, and they used to recycle their props a lot. Now they altered the bottom. This bottom was flat originally from the original film. They altered the bottom of this, putting rings of lights in it, and had it go under the sea with the sea view in the thing. It's supposed to be an outer spacecraft.
The US Department of Defense refused to cooperate with the production due to its anti-militaristic themes. Military vehicles on set were actually provided by the 3rd Armoured Cavalry Regiment at Fort Meade. Bernard Herrmann's score is one of the film's most groundbreaking elements. Herrmann, who'd previously worked with Orson Welles on Citizen Kane and conducted the infamous War of the Worlds radio broadcast in 1938, knew exactly how an alien invasion should sound.
This is Elmer Davis again. We still don't know what it is or where it comes from, but there's something there.
He eliminated the string section entirely, replacing it with electric violins, electric bass, and electric cello. Then he added organs, pianos, harps, and percussion. But the real innovation was the theremin. The theremin, invented by Russian scientist Leon Theremin in 1928, is the only instrument played without touching it. The player's hands interrupt electromagnetic fields near 2 antennae, one controlling pitch, the other volume, producing an eerie, otherworldly sound. Herrmann used 2 theremins, pitched at different frequencies, double-tracked and occasionally reversed on tape. The result was deeply unsettling and became synonymous with science fiction. Visually, Robert Wise adopted a documentary-style realism. Cinematographer Leo Tova incorporated film noir aesthetics. Dramatic shadows, high-contrast lighting, especially inside Klaatu's ship. Real-life news reporters like Gabriel Heater and H.V. Kaltenborn appeared as themselves, blurring fiction and reality. One delightful touch, the equations on Professor Barnhart's blackboard are authentic physics, the 3-body problem in Newtonian gravitation, relevant to interstellar navigation. Rare attention to detail for 1950s sci-fi.
How can you be so sure? Have you tested this theory?
I find it works well enough to get me from one planet to another.
And now, the golden flicker moment. When Klaatu hides amongst humans, he adopts the alias Mr. Carpenter, a nod to Jesus, the carpenter's son. He delivers a message of peace, is killed by humanity's fear and violence, then resurrected to deliver a final warning before ascending. Interestingly, screenwriter Edmund North intended these parallels, but director Robert Wise only recognized them years later. The religious subtext wasn't a calculated marketing decision. It emerged organically from the story. The Production Code Administration, however, took issue. The Breen office stipulated that Klaatu could not be brought back to life, as only God can do that. So Klaatu is revived, but only temporarily, and he clarifies that the power of life and death lies with the Almighty Spirit.
He has the power of life and death?
No. That power is reserved to the Almighty Spirit.
A line North called a foolish compromise that had everyone boiling over. Do you agree that this is the golden flicker moment? The Day the Earth Stood Still was released during the Korean War, at the height of Cold War anxieties. The world had just witnessed the horrors of atomic weapons, and nuclear annihilation felt like a real possibility. Klaatu's warning is blunt. Earth's development of nuclear weapons threatens the entire galaxy. Robots like Gort are stationed across the universe, programmed to destroy any civilization that strays from peace. It's militant pacifism. Join us or be obliterated. Producer Julian Blaustein openly supported a strong United Nations, and the film became a plea for international cooperation at a time when nationalism and militarism were ascendant. Decades later, President Ronald Reagan referenced The Day the Earth Stood Still in diplomatic discussions. In his first meeting with Mikhail Gorbachev in 1985, he suggested that Americans and Soviets would cooperate if threatened by aliens from outer space. Reagan was also moved by The Day After, a 1983 TV film depicting nuclear war. He wrote in his diary that it left him greatly depressed. Upon release in 1951, reviews were mixed. Variety praised its realism and suspense, but the New York Times called it tepid entertainment. But over time, the film's reputation grew. In the 1970s and 1980s, it became a cult favorite, celebrated for its thoughtful approach to first contact and its allegorical commentary on fear and media hysteria. By the way, remember producer Julian Blaustein's absolute terror at that first test screening we mentioned at the start? Well, here is the outcome.
And then we're cooked. If you laugh at the robot, you got no movie. I wanted to leave the theater. I didn't want to look. But inevitably, and the worst part of it was, the door of the spaceship opened and the robot came out, which was after Klaatu was shot. And there wasn't a sound in the theater except my exhaling. Well, we went back to the studio, and the publicity department brought the preview cards, which were heavily complimentary. I said, I can't understand, Darryl, the audience laughing. He said, they're delighted. Authority, particularly military authority, is being so silly and foolish that they think they could be effective against it. That's what they're laughing at. They're laughing in anticipation. He was so right.
Arthur C. Clarke included it in his list of the 12 best science fiction films. The phrase
Klaatu, Barada, Nikto
became iconic. George Lucas paid tribute by naming 3 bounty hunters in Star Wars after Klaatu, Barada, and Nikto. Today, it's recognized as one of the first intelligent science fiction films to tackle serious political and moral issues. The American Film Institute placed it in the top 10 US science fiction films. It was selected for the National Film Registry and holds a 93% score on Rotten Tomatoes. In 2008, the film was remade with Keanu Reeves as Klaatu and a CGI Gort that could split into millions of nanites. As you might expect, the remake simply couldn't capture the soul of the original. If you discovered something new today, illuminate our day by clicking like and subscribe to Golden Flicker, so you never miss a story from the annals of cinema history. Which film should we explore next? Let us know in the comments.